Welcome to the Sleep Carriage. My name is Dev. Tonight we're going to take a slow, easy walk through ancient Athens at twilight. The air is soft, the stones are warm beneath your sandals, and the hum of the city drifts in like a lullaby. Athens may be one of history's most famous cities, but tonight, you're not rushing to a battlefield or debating in the assembly. You're just strolling through its streets as evening gently settles. And, yes, let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive very long here. The food is rough, the dust clings to your skin, and the water doesn't exactly pass modern health inspections. But for one night, you'll manage just fine. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you can, post your location and the local time in the comments. I always love seeing where in the world you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin at the edge of Athens, where the last sunlight paints the hills a dusty gold. The air carries the faint tang of olive oil and smoke, and your feet scuff across dry earth as you step onto a worn road leading inward. To your left, a farmer is finishing his day's work, guiding a stubborn mule that seems more interested in finding a patch of weeds than carrying baskets of figs. To your right, children chase one another in the dirt, shouting and laughing in voices that bounce against low stone houses. You smell smoke rising from hearth fires. Dinner is being prepared, barley bread baking in clay ovens, lentils simmering in pots, and fish grilling on skewers. It isn't rich food, not compared to what the elite will feast on tonight, but it's filling, and after a long day, filling is enough. The road narrows, and you feel the rhythm of sandals all around you. Merchants call out, though half-heartedly most are already packing up their goods. Clay pots are stacked, fish wrapped in leaves, olives poured into baskets to carry home. The air smells sharp like brine and garlic and smoke. Athens at dusk is alive but calming, as though the city itself is exhaling after a long day. You pass a fountain where women gather, filling heavy clay jugs with water to balance on their heads. They murmur to each other, half gossip, half song. One of them glances at you, amused you're clearly not from around here. Historians still argue about how much women really moved freely in Athens. Some say they were mostly hidden away in their homes, while others think daily life gave them more chances to be seen. Whatever the truth, tonight, you see them at work, their voices adding a soft note to the evening chorus. The shadows grow longer, stretching like ink between the stones. Above you, the Acropolis glows faintly in the fading light, its temples watching silently as they have for centuries. You step forward, the city guiding you deeper, as twilight gathers and the first stars appear overhead. You move further along the narrow road, following the trickle of people who seem to know exactly where they're going. The sound of water draws you toward a public fountain, one of the lifelines of the city. By day, these fountains are crowded and noisy, but at this twilight hour they feel almost ceremonial. You hear the steady splash of water against stone, a rhythm that has echoed here for generations, long before you arrived, and long after you leave. You see women leaning over with clay jugs, carefully balancing them as they fill to the brim. The jugs are heavy, and their arms are already sore from a day of carrying bread, tending children, and mending cloth. But this is part of the rhythm of life. You hear laughter and gossip exchanged like currency. Who argued in the agora, which neighbor is late on their rent, and what the priest said at the temple steps this morning. For a moment, the fountain feels less like a chore and more like a community hearth. The water itself isn't sparkling clean. Your modern eyes might hesitate, but to an Athenian, it is precious. Athens depends on these public fountains, and some historians think that the reliability of water distribution here shaped the way citizens thought about fairness, law, and the sharing of resources. A little like democracy trickling out one clay jug at a time. You watch a young boy scamper barefoot past the women, splashing water on his legs. He gets a scolding, but you notice the corner of his mother's mouth twitch in amusement. Life is never only serious, not even in Athens. Children find ways to carve joy out of dust and chores. Nearby, a weary man in a cloak lowers his jug with an exaggerated sigh. He mutters to no one in particular, "Why must the gods put water so far from my house?" And a few people laugh. Dry humor seems timeless. Someone replies, "Perhaps the gods wanted you to walk more for your health." And now the chuckle grows. For just a moment, the fountain becomes a stage, and the city feels like a single family teasing one another in the dimming light. You kneel down to touch the water. It's cool, smooth against your fingers, carrying the faint mineral tang of limestone. You imagine drinking it after a long day in the sun, the relief spreading through your throat and chest. And though it's simply just water, it feels sacred in its own way. Some Athenians would even dedicate little offerings at fountains, dropping garlands or whispering prayers of thanks to nymphs who were believed to dwell in flowing water. Some historians debate how literally these beliefs were held, but in this twilight haze, you find yourself wanting to whisper a thank you too. The fountain stone is worn, smoothed by thousands of hands. You realize that the very spot you're standing on has been touched by countless lives, mothers, philosophers, laborers, wanderers. It's a quiet reminder that cities are built not just on stones and politics, but on footsteps, clay jugs, and everyday chores. You rise, the jug-carrying women fading into the dusk, their silhouettes moving like a slow procession. The fountain still murmurs behind you, a steady heartbeat in the city's chest, as you wander back toward the streets that lead to the heart of Athens. You follow your nose before you follow your feet. Somewhere nearby, the warm smell of barley bread drifts out of a doorway, mingling with the salt of olives and the faint tang of goat cheese. Dinner time has arrived in Athens, though you notice it is less of a feast and more of a ritual of survival. You stop near a small home where a family is gathered outside, because inside the air would be too thick with smoke. The mother tears pieces from a round loaf of coarse bread. The edges are cracked and hard, but the middle is soft, steaming faintly in the cool night air. She hands pieces to the children first, then to her husband, and only after everyone else does she take her own share. It is barley, mostly, since wheat is more expensive. Barley fills the stomach but leaves a faint bitterness on the tongue. Beside the bread is a clay bowl of olives, dark, salty, and shiny with oil. You pluck one in your imagination and feel the pit against your teeth, a sharp burst of brine waking your senses. Olives are everywhere here, so common they almost feel invisible to Athenians. Yet to you, the foreign visitor, they taste like the landscape itself, dusty groves stretching across the hills, their silver-green leaves rustling in the wind. A chunk of goat cheese completes the meal. It is crumbly and sharp, with a sourness that makes you purse your lips before smiling. The family eats in silence, except for the youngest child, who asks if there will be honey for dessert. The father chuckles, shaking his head. Honey is for festival days, not for ordinary twilight meals. Sometimes, if fortune smiles, there would be fish grilled on sticks, fresh from the nearby port. Tonight, though, fish are absent. The family doesn't seem disappointed. They eat slowly, savoring what they have. Historians note that Athenians often flavored their food with garum, a fermented fish sauce. To your modern nose, it might sound peculiar, even unpleasant, but to them it was a prized seasoning. A little tang of garum could make even the driest barley bread seem special. As you watch, you can't help noticing how different meals would be depending on who you were. For the wealthy, evenings meant couches, endless cups of watered wine, and servants to bring platters of roasted meat. For the ordinary Athenian like this family, it is enough to have bread that isn't too stale, olives that aren't too wrinkled, and cheese that hasn't gone sour in the sun. Some scholars debate how much meat the average citizen ate, whether it was a rare treat reserved for sacrifices or a slightly more regular indulgence. Either way, tonight your stomach is filled by bread and olives, and the rhythm of chewing is steady, comforting. The father raises a small cup of wine, diluted with water. Drinking it straight would be considered rude, even barbaric. He swirls it gently and mutters a small word of thanks to Dionysus, the god of wine and joy. The family drinks in turn, and though the wine is weak, it brings warmth to the cheeks. You sit back, letting the sounds of their meal blend with the night crickets in the grass, the low murmur of voices, the scrape of clay bowls. It is not a grand feast, but it is life, plain and steady, and for a weary traveler like you, it feels perfect. You drift away from the quiet family supper and follow the flow of footsteps toward the agora, the bustling heart of Athens. Even though dusk has painted the sky in deeper shades of blue, the marketplace still hums with life. The agora is never truly silent. By day, it is thunderous with voices, but at twilight it softens into something else. A mix of music, bargaining, and the faint shuffle of people closing their stalls. You step onto the wide open square. Stalls lean into one another like tired shoulders. Wooden frames creaking as vendors pack away their wares. Chickens still flap noisily in their baskets, annoyed at being carried off. A donkey brays somewhere, sounding half exasperated, half resigned. The smell of fish lingers in the air, a mix of fresh catches from the Piraeus port and those that stayed just a little too long in the sun. You wrinkle your nose, but then a swirl of roasted garlic and sizzling meat floats over from a food seller's corner, rescuing the air from ruin. Flute players perch on stone steps, piping out tunes that weave through the fading noise of haggling. A boy drums on an overturned amphora, keeping a rhythm that makes a few children start dancing. You pause to watch, amused. Even after a long day, joy finds its way into the agora. You stop near a potter's stall where clay vessels are lined up in neat rows. Craters for mixing wine, kylixes for drinking, amphorae tall as a child. The potter's hands are stained with red dust, his fingernails forever etched with clay. He mutters about the day's poor sales, yet as he packs away his work, you sense pride in every piece. Some scholars suggest that pottery was one of Athens' greatest exports, shipped across the Mediterranean, carrying the city's identity in every painted swirl. To you, though, these pots feel less like commerce and more like voices silent but lasting, carrying stories far beyond the agora. A fishmonger shouts his final offers of the day. He waves a silver-scaled catch in the air, swearing it's fresh, though you suspect the fish is on its second round of promises. A passerby shakes his head, muttering something about market liars, and the two laugh. Commerce here is as much performance as trade. You glance around and notice philosophers lingering on benches. Even now, They seem immune to the fading light, debating loudly about justice, virtue, or what makes a man truly wise. Some historians believe philosophy wasn't confined to schools or formal settings. It spilled into streets and markets, carried on by voices that refused to stay silent. Tonight you hear them still, though their words blend into the general hum, no sharper than the clink of amphorae or the cries of vendors. The square is dimming, but your journey has only just started. As the agora thinks, you notice one figure who does not seem ready to leave. He sits cross-legged on a worn stone bench, his cloak draped loosely over his shoulders, more ragged than refined. His beard is unkempt, his feet bare, and yet people linger around him as if drawn by an invisible tether. You realize you are looking at Socrates. Yes, that's Socrates, the philosopher who seems less like a man and more like a walking question mark. He leans toward a young man, his voice low but carrying just enough for nearby ears to catch. "What is courage?" he asks, tilting his head with a curious half-smile. The young man hesitates, offering something about fighting bravely in battle. Socrates nods as if considering it, then replies softly, "But is a man still courageous if he fights out of fear of shame?" The boy stammers, frowns, tries again. Socrates never raises his voice, never mocks. He simply asks, and with each question, the ground beneath the boy's answer seems to shift like sand. You watch, a little amused. If you were in the young man's sandals, you'd probably want to throw your bread crusts at him by now. This is the rhythm of Socrates, gentle, persistent, and oddly maddening. Some people walk away frustrated, muttering that he ruins good conversation. Others stay, unable to resist the tug of his questions. The marketplace grows darker, lanterns flickering here and there, but Socrates continues. He asks about justice, about goodness, about whether knowledge is the same thing as virtue. The small circle around him leans closer, caught between irritation and fascination. You notice that Socrates does not look like the statues you've seen. No polished marble or heroic posture. In life, he seems ordinary, even shabby. Perhaps that's what made him so dangerous. Wisdom wrapped in rags. Historians still debate how much of what we know about Socrates comes from his own words, and how much comes from his student Plato. Was he truly a saint of reason, or just a clever gadfly who annoyed the powerful at the wrong time? No one can say for certain, but here, at dusk, beneath the cooling sky, he feels less like a legend and more like a man who cannot stop asking why. You step closer, feeling the warmth of the small crowd, the flicker of torchlight on their faces. Socrates glances at you briefly, as though you two are about to be drawn into his web of questions. "And you?" he says softly, though perhaps he means someone else. "What do you seek when you walk these streets?" You freeze, heart thumping, but then he looks away, already pulling someone else into his orbit. You exhale, relieved, amused, and a little unsettled. Perhaps it is better not to answer him tonight. As the crowd drifts, you step away, leaving the philosopher to his questions and his patient circle of listeners. His voice fades behind you, blending with the night air, carrying truths or perhaps only riddles that still echo across time. The chatter of Socrates and his circle fades behind you, replaced by the softer sounds of footsteps on dirt paths and the rustle of fig leaves overhead. You wander off the main square, drawn toward a quieter part of Athens, where the air feels cooler and the streets less crowded. Lantern light flickers from courtyards, and a faint breeze carries the sweetness of blooming herbs. You've reached the home of Aspasia, the woman many Athenians whispered about, though fewer truly understood. Her doorway is open, as if welcoming the night itself. You step inside and find yourself in a shaded garden, lit by small oil lamps. The glow falls across fig trees heavy with fruit, grapevines curling along the walls, and cushions arranged beneath the branches. Voices murmur calm, deliberate, and far more musical than the bickering of the agora. Aspasia herself sits in the center, her presence calm but magnetic. She isn't draped in the heavy fabrics of wealthy matrons, but in lighter cloth that lets her move with ease. Her voice is steady, measured, and her words carry the rhythm of water flowing from the very fountains you passed earlier. She speaks not of chores or gossip, but of rhetoric, the art of shaping thought into speech, the skill of weaving persuasion into words. Some historians argue whether she truly taught philosophy and oratory to Athens' brightest minds, or whether her influence has been exaggerated, colored by admiration or suspicion. But tonight you see the way the young men lean forward, captivated. Even Pericles himself, the great statesman of Athens, is said to have learned from her voice. A student recites a passage too quickly, his sentences tripping over themselves. Aspasia interrupts not unkindly, but with a gentle laugh. "Slow down," she says. "Words are like figs. If you rush, they split and fall before you can taste them." The group chuckles and the student tries again, this time with patience. The garden hums with calm debate. They discuss the meaning of love, the weight of justice, the ways a city can rise or fall not by armies, but by the stories it tells itself. You listen, lulled by their cadence, even if the words blur into something dreamlike. You notice a small bird perched on the edge of a clay basin, dipping its beak into the water, unbothered by the human voices around it. For a moment, the entire garden feels timeless, an island of thought and quiet beauty in a city known for noise. Aspasia glances your way, as if she knows you've been listening all along. Her smile is small, knowing, and kind. Then she turns back to her students, guiding their voices like a musician guiding instruments, shaping Athens' future with nothing more than conversation in the twilight. You rise quietly, letting the fig branches brush your shoulder as you slip back into the street. Behind you, the laughter and debate continue, soft as music, carried on the night air. The night deepens as you follow the winding paths of Athens, where the stones beneath your feet still hold the day's warmth. The chatter of gardens and symposiums fades into something quieter. The steady rhythm of hammers, the rasp of saws, the hiss of molten bronze cooling in its mold. You've stumbled into the quarter of the artisans, where twilight doesn't end the workday. Here, the rhythm of life is measured not by speeches or debates, but by hands shaping the city's bones. The air smells of clay and smoke, of beeswax softening in bowls, of wool being washed and dyed in great vats. Sparks leap from a bronze worker's shop, where a smith leans over his anvil, sleeves rolled high. His hammer falls in slow, deliberate beats, each one echoing in your chest like a drum. The glow of his forge lights up the alley, painting the workers' faces with shifting gold. You pause and watch as a small figurine takes the form, perhaps a votive offering, perhaps a child's toy. In this quarter, both sacred and ordinary are made by the same steady hands. Not far away, women crouch over looms, weaving threads into fabric as patterned as the stories of their lives. The warp and weft clack softly, hypnotic, like a lullaby in wooden notes. One woman hums as she works, her tune rising and falling with the loom's rhythm. Some historians say these household workshops kept Athens clothed more reliably than any distant trade ship. Others argue that imported silks and dyes were the real treasures. Either way, you can see that the city depends on both the humble and the exotic woven together. You duck into a potter's yard, where rows of amphorae stand cooling in the moonlight. Their surfaces are painted with delicate black figures, heroes, gods, and ordinary scenes of drinking or harvesting. A boy brushes the fresh clay with water, smoothing it before the kiln swallows it in flame. He looks barely old enough to carry one of these jars when full, yet his hands move with the calm skill of generations. There's a kind of quiet competition here. Each artisan wants their amphora to last, their bronze to shine, their fabric to be chosen for the wealthy households. Yet the work is slow, steady, almost meditative. You run your hand along a finished jar, the clay cool and rough beneath your fingertips. Someone offers you a cup of watered wine, a small kindness in a place where conversation is rare. They do not speak in lofty sentences about love or justice. They talk about kills that cracked, dyes that failed, a shipment of tin that came late. One man jokes about how every statue of a god looks suspiciously like his neighbor, always taller, always better hair. The others laugh, a short burst of weary amusement, then return to their work. And here you feel it, the backbone of Athens. Not the marble temples, not the debates of philosophers, but the quiet persistence of hands shaping the world. The hammer, the loom, the wheel are the heartbeat you carry with you as you step back into the streets. The city hums differently now. You've seen its thinkers and its makers, its voices and its hands. You walk on, the night wrapping around you like a well-woven cloak, as if Athens itself is guiding you toward its next secret. The streets bend again, and suddenly the sound of laughter, lyres, and clinking cups reaches your ears. You've wandered into the world of the symposium, the place where Athenians gather not merely to drink, but to talk, argue, sing, and occasionally make fools of themselves. You pause at the entrance to a courtyard house, where oil lamps flicker like fireflies, spilling golden light across the marble threshold. You step inside, and the air shifts. Cushions are scattered on the floor, low tables set with bowls of olives, figs, and bread. The smell of wine, sharp, sweet, slightly sour, fills the room, carried in clay craters, watered down just enough to make the night last. Great. Another evening where moderation is both praised and ignored. A flute begins to play, high and reedy, while the soft plucking of a lyre strings the mood together. Men recline on couches, leaning on elbows, cups in hand. They laugh, their voices rising and falling like waves. You catch fragments of conversations. One man argues that love is a divine madness. Another insists it is simply hunger wearing a costume. A third interrupts with a story about a neighbor's donkey so profound, apparently, that the whole group dissolves into laughter. Here, the rhythm of life is not shaped by work, but by wit. The cleverer your remark, the better your standing. You watch as one guest makes a toast, spilling a little wine as he declares that democracy itself was probably invented at a symposium after one too many cups. Some historians believe that the symposium really was where ideas traveled, ideas that shaped law and philosophy. Others argue it was mostly an excuse to drink with style. Either way, you can see the truth in both claims tonight. Women drift among the couches, playing music, reciting poetry, or pouring more wine. Their presence is both welcomed and ignored, depending on the speaker's ego. A poetess leans forward, reciting verses that hush the room for a moment. Her words fall like slow raindrops, steady and tender, until the silence is broken by applause. The balance between wisdom and entertainment, philosophy and jest, feels fragile here, like a clay cup always on the verge of tipping. There's even a kind of ritual chaos to it all. Dice are tossed, games played, songs improvised. One man insists everyone should drink in equal measure. Another suggests everyone drink in proportion to their beauty. Neither rule lasts more than a few minutes. What does last is the sense of being caught in something larger than yourself. A current of voices, laughter, music, and wine that carries you deep into the night. You lean back, sipping from a cup offered to you. The wine is thin but warming. The cushions are softer than the stone streets outside, and the music drifts over you like a gentle tide. The talk of gods and love, of politics and poetry, weaves into your drowsy thoughts until you can no longer tell if you're listening or dreaming. Somewhere, outside the house, an owl calls from a rooftop. The sound reminds you that Athens is still awake beyond these walls, that the city is 1,000 symphonies at once, each quarter playing its own tune. You set your cup down, slip past the courtyards, and return to the streets, carrying with you the echo of laughter, the glow of lamps, and the soft haze of wine. The night is deep now. The stars are brighter, the air cooler, and the city is still unfolding. Ahead, another sound beckons, a different kind of gathering, where rhythm is not in debate but in dance. The rhythm changes as you follow the sound. At first, it is faint, just a soft pulse, like hands brushing against stretched hide. Then it grows, faster, steadier, filling the night with a heartbeat that does not belong to you alone. You round a corner and find yourself at the edge of a festival gathering. Here, Athens has cast aside its thoughtful debates, its measured wit, and chosen instead the language of music, movement, and ritual. Torches flare in the darkness, their smoke rising in twisting ribbons toward the stars. The glow makes shadows leap across the walls, so that dancers seem larger than life, bodies doubling and tripling in the wavering firelight. Men and women circle together, feet pounding the earth, their tunics swaying as they spin, clap, and call. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, pine resin from the torches, and roasted meat from stalls set up along the street. You slip into the crowd, and the rhythm pulls you along. There is no stage here, no separation between performer and audience. You are the dance, whether or not you know the steps. A drumbeat rises, joined by the high cry of an aulos flute, weaving through the bodies like a silver thread. The music is wild, untamed, but not chaotic. It's the rhythm of life itself, of fields planted, of grain harvested, of hearts quickened by joy or wine. Festivals in Athens are many, and each seems both sacred and playful. Tonight, you're not entirely sure which god is being honored. Dionysus? Perhaps, if the wine-soaked laughter is any clue. Or Apollo, if the dancer's grace is meant as tribute. Some historians say that many festivals blurred together religion, entertainment, and civic duty all rolled into one. Others argue each was distinct, carefully timed by the city's calendar. Standing here, you find it hard to believe in boundaries. To the dancers, this is simply the night itself, lived fully. You notice garlands of ivy draped around necks, flowers tucked into hair. A boy balances a jug of wine on his head while dancing badly, but proudly earning cheers. Someone tosses figs into the crowd, and a girl catches one mid-air, biting into it as she twirls. The sense of freedom is overwhelming. Here, the philosopher is no wiser than the farmer, the poet no more elegant than the potter. Under torchlight, they are all bodies moving together, bound by rhythm and flame. You can't help but smile at the strange rituals woven into the night. At one point, a group of revelers form a line, weaving through the crowd in a zigzag pattern. The line grows, stretching like a serpent, wrapping back upon itself until it collapses in laughter. Was it a sacred pattern meant to honor the gods, or just an excuse to trip your neighbor? No one seems entirely sure. Some historians believe that the roots of Greek theater sprang from nights like this, from ritual dances and drunken hymns to Dionysus. Others suggest the theater was carefully designed, born not from chaos but from deliberate civic planning. Watching the dancers now, sweaty and luminous in torchlight, you lean toward the first theory. After all, isn't every play just a polished echo of wild nights like this? The drumming slows, then stops. For a moment, silence washes over the crowd, as if everyone has collectively remembered to breathe. Then, one voice rises in song, low and steady, joined by another and another, until the entire square hums with a chant. It is not words, not even a melody you can follow, but the sound wraps around you like a cloak. The fire crackles, the stars blink down, and you feel both very small and very infinite. The city is alive tonight, and for a heartbeat, so are you, woven into the dance, the chant, the endless rhythm of Athens. When the song finally fades, people drift back into the streets, carrying their laughter and ivy crowns with them. The square grows quiet again, though the earth still seems to remember the pounding feet. You turn away, moving deeper into the city, where quieter rituals await, shrines tucked into corners, whispers of prayer carried on the night wind. The energy of the festival still lingers in your chest like a second heartbeat, but the streets beyond are calmer now, softened by distance. You leave the torches and music behind and wander into a quieter part of Athens, where the stone walls rise higher, their shadows longer. Here, the laughter fades, replaced by murmurs and the soft rustle of sandals across dust. You find yourself approaching a small shrine set into the wall of a house. It is simple, a little alcove with a carved figure, worn smooth by time and touch. Offerings are scattered at its base. Sprigs of herbs, figs, a small clay lamp still faintly glowing. Someone has left a few drops of oil shimmering in the dish, its fragrance filling the air. The statue is unassuming, but the reverence around it is unmistakable. This is Athens at prayer, not the grand temples atop the Acropolis, where sacrifices are made with ceremony and spectacle, but the small, personal gestures of faith. Here, a woman kneels with her hands pressed together, whispering a prayer you cannot hear. Her child, barely old enough to speak, mimics her motions, laying a pebble at the statue's feet. A man passing by pauses, touches the shrine lightly, and continues on his way. No one lingers long. The ritual is quiet, woven into daily life, like breathing. Historians often describe the Greeks as people who saw the gods everywhere, in rivers, in trees, in the shifting of stars. Walking here, you understand what that meant. Each doorway could be guarded by Hermes. Each hearth could belong to Hestia. The divine was not distant, locked away in temples, but close, woven into the bricks and stones of the city. You continue your walk, passing more shrines tucked into corners and crossroads. Each one flickers with offerings of wine poured into the earth, a cluster of flowers, a coin left gleaming in the dark. The gestures are small, but together they form a quiet heartbeat beneath the noise of the city. It is as if Athens itself is alive, breathing through these rituals, whispering to the gods in 1,000 tiny voices. A little further along, you stumble upon a courtyard where a family has gathered under the stars. They sit around a small altar, its flames steady in the night air. Bread is broken, a libation poured, and then they share a meal. The eldest among them recites a prayer, his voice steady but unhurried. The children are restless, half listening, half gazing at the fireflies darting in the shadows. The scene feels timeless, an everyday devotion carried out not for spectacle, but for comfort, for continuity. It strikes you how prayer here is not separate from living. It is not confined to the temple steps or the festival's roar. It is a thread woven into the fabric of twilight strolls, family dinners, whispered hopes, and quiet offerings. And in that realization, you feel something soften inside yourself, a reminder that even in the busiest of cities, stillness can be found. The night deepens. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows too early, confused by torchlight. A breeze passes through the olive trees, carrying the smell of earth and resin. You breathe it in and pause before another shrine. The flame of its lamp trembles, but does not go out. You realize now that Twilight in Athens is not only about markets, festivals, or debate. It is also about these moments of quiet devotion, where a city of thousands folds into silence, each person tending their own connection to the divine. It is here, in these hushed corners, that you feel the city's heartbeat most clearly. The streets grow quieter still as you leave behind the shrines and winding alleys, moving toward the edge of the city where the walls stand tall against the night sky. From here, the hills beyond Athens are visible, their outlines softened by starlight. You notice the silhouettes of shepherds' fires flickering in the distance, faint beacons across the dark slopes. The sounds of sheep bleating, dogs barking faintly drift on the air, blending with the hum of cicadas that never seem to sleep. You pass through a wide gate, not leaving the city but wandering near its threshold. Here, the mood changes. The marketplace bustle and festival songs have been replaced by the calm rhythms of laborers finishing their day. A man leads a donkey burdened with sacks of grain, its hooves striking dull notes against the packed earth. Two women carry clay jugs balanced carefully on their shoulders, their laughter soft, as though night itself has asked them to lower their voices. This outer part of the city feels different, less crowded, more spread out, dotted with gardens and small workshops. The air carries a new scent, smoke from wood fires, mingling with the sweetness of figs drying on racks. You pause near a workshop where a potter works by lamplight. His wheel spins slowly, a steady hum, while his hands shape the clay with practiced ease. The vessel takes form under his touch, an amphora tall and symmetrical. The flicker of the flame makes the clay shine as though it were already fired, glowing with quiet life. For a moment, you feel hypnotized by the rhythm of the spinning wheel. Round and round it goes, never rushing, never faltering. The potter does not look up, but his movements are fluid, almost meditative. This, too, is Athens at twilight. Not just speeches and shrines, but the endless shaping of the things people will need tomorrow. Clay for storage, clay for water, clay for offerings at temples. The hum of work stretches beyond the city walls, continuing long after the torches of the marketplace are extinguished. As you step away, you notice a small vineyard spreading across a slope. The vines curl upward, their leaves catching silver from the moonlight. Though the harvest is months away, the smell of soil, cool and rich, lingers in the air. Farmers move among the rows with quiet purpose, their lanterns bobbing like fireflies. They do not speak much, but you sense their pride in tending vines whose roots reach deep into the earth, vines that will one day yield the wine for libations, for feasts, for simple meals shared in courtyards. It strikes you how every layer of Athens breathes with its own rhythm. The shouts of the agora, the debates of philosophers, the prayers at doorways, and the quiet diligence of workers in fields and workshops. Together, they form a symphony, each part different, but none without purpose. You pause to rest on a stone bench near the city wall. From here, Athens lies spread before you like a vast mosaic, each fragment glowing faintly in the night. The Acropolis rises above all, serene, a crown of stone touched by moonlight. Below, countless lamps flicker like stars fallen to earth, and between them, the streets weave in wind, alive with footsteps, prayers, arguments, laughter, all the things that make a city breathe. You exhale slowly, your body sinking into the calm of this view. The noise of the day has quieted, the sharp edges softened. Here, at the boundary between city and countryside, you feel both enclosed and free, held within Athens yet open to the vast sky beyond. It is a liminal space, a place between places, where the city exhales into the fields, and the fields breathe back into the city. And as you sit in this stillness, you realize that twilight in Athens is not a moment that passes, but a feeling you carry, a softness that lingers long after the lamps are extinguished. The night has fully taken the city now. Torches burn low in the streets, their flames shrinking to embers. The conversations of the day have dissolved into silence, leaving only faint traces, an echo of footsteps, a hushed laugh, the murmur of a prayer whispered before sleep. Athens is no longer the bustling heart of trade and debate, but a dreaming body resting beneath the watch of stars. You rise from the bench by the city wall and walk slowly back through the quiet lanes. The air is cool, carrying the gentle perfume of laurel and figure. Windows are shuttered, doors closed, but here and there, lamplight leaks through a reminder that life never entirely sleeps, that somewhere, someone is still awake, still weaving, still whispering, still watching the skies. The Acropolis gleams softly above, its marble touched with moonlight, timeless and unyielding. In its shadow, you feel the hush of centuries pressing close, as though you too have become part of the long story of Athens, a story of voices raised in markets, of footsteps worn into stone, of prayers carried upward to unseen gods. As your steps slow, so does your breath. The rhythm of your body softens, falling into sync with the stillness of the city around you. The noise of thought begins to quiet, like a marketplace shutting its stalls. One by one, you carry with you the scent of olive oil, the sound of sandals against stone, the glow of lanterns in the dusk. Athens, at twilight, is no longer a place of movement. It has become a cradle of silence, and within that cradle you feel yourself drifting, as though the night itself has taken you in its arms. You close your eyes, and the streets fade. The stars above remain, and as you surrender to their watch, Athens becomes a dream, a gentle dream that will carry you into rest.